But men kind of build society to court other men in order to enter relationships with women. Let me cook. And what if the reason why the alpha male podcast bro alt-right pipeline is so strong is because men are subconsciously crashing out that they are being denied relationships with women by women. That's why I don't think it's a male loneliness epidemic. I think it's a male entitlement epidemic. Because all throughout patriarchy, men have been the ones deciding who women married. Women have been bargaining tools, business mergers, family mergers, negotiation tactics, but all in all, pawns that men traded between one another. This is truly the first time in the history of patriarchal society that women are allowed to decide what relationships they enter. Men used to have to court and woo other men for the affection of a woman. Fathers paid husbands to get daughters off of their hands, to transfer property ownership to the husband. Long story short, men are used to being accepted or denied by other men regarding relationships with women. It is genuinely a novel concept for a woman to be able to tell a man no, and for that no to have any level of weight. There is a reason why telling a man I'm not interested at the bar is less successful than I have a boyfriend. And that is also to say that violence against women was seen as a slight against her man. And so the defense of women was much more pertinent because it was a defense of one's own manly honor. Men perceiving women as someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's mom. But patriarchy made men entitled to women. And not in the obvious way, in the it is not women who can deny me relationships with women kind of way. Because women were property, currency for exchanges between men, and now they aren't. Oh, so you just don't think people could be in love until women had human rights? Well, I think the feeling of love has always been real and important and necessary and constant. But I also think it's pretty hard to differentiate feelings of love when your capacity to survive society is in relationship to the love that you have to feel for your partner. Governing bodies recognize property. It is fairly recently that governing bodies started recognizing and implementing human rights, civil rights. And again, these women were property. So it's like a patriarchy is like a millennia-long Stockholm syndrome. In the past 60 years, post-World War II, has been like the women have been let out of the dungeon. I definitely took the long way home on this one. But my point is, men today are grappling with having to actually be in relationships with women in order to be in relationships with women. And rather than adapt with women's relatively newfound footing, we're getting crash outs. We're getting the manosphere alt-right pipeline. We're getting mass influxes of incel culture. We're getting attacks on women's reproductive freedoms, attacks on women's civic freedoms. If you haven't looked into the SAVE Act and what it does for women who have changed their name when they get married and it doesn't match their birth certificate, or the repealing affirmative action, white women were the number one benefactors of affirmative action. It's like patriarchy's extinction burst, almost. And all because women are allowed to say no.
The male loneliness epidemic is fake. You men are just horrible people and nobody wants to be around y'all. Any general issue that men face, I promise, you can trace it back to toxic masculinity. The reason why men feel like nobody cares about their feelings is because men are socialized into believing that emotional vulnerability is a sign of weakness. A lot of you men are lonely because you don't see women as equal peers and you view men as competition. Nobody wants to be around that person.
This is such an incel-ass take because I know dudes that look like gargoyles that pull bad bitches. I don't think dudes understand just how low the bar is set when it comes to dating women. A lot of dudes are trash. If you just develop some social skills, have good hygiene, and then have a decent sense of fashion, you will be drowning in coochie.
There's a male loneliness epidemic because women only date equal and up. Yeah, you know why that is? And you know why you should if you're a woman? Because men like this. In an interview, Gabby Petito's parents said that one of their goals for this new documentary was to teach women about the signs of DV. And there is so much to learn from this documentary, so I'm going to do a series, but I wanted to start with this man himself. As someone who works with survivors of DV, one of the most common things I hear women say is that it was the man they gave a chance to who became the most cruel and abusive partner. And the reason behind this is that abuse stems from insecurity and self-hatred. Men who believe that their partners could easily leave them are much more likely to use abusive and manipulative tactics to keep that person from leaving. And in this documentary, we see Brian using so many of these tactics. I will go over all of the signs in the next video. There are 3 things I want to talk about to finish out this video that can help you determine whether insecurity in a man could potentially turn to violence. Number 1, you want to be careful of a man who places a high value on masculinity, patriarchy, and typical gender roles, especially if they are failing in these systems. If they are insecure in their masculinity, or if they are at the bottom rung of the hierarchy that is patriarchy and feel powerless in that, they are more likely to seek power through violence against women and children. 2, if they talk about past rejections a lot and hold a clear animosity towards women, run. And 3, if they put you down, try and make you feel self-conscious, or try and chip away at your self-esteem, let the first time they do that be the last. Because not only is this a sign of an insecure man, this is a sign of an insecure man who is willing to hurt you to maintain power and control over you, and any man who will do this is a dangerous man, and you need to get out as soon as possible.
Men tend to thrive more in relationships and in marriages, while women tend to thrive more when they're single. Let's talk about that, because there are a lot of facts to this that are actually backed up by numerous studies that have been done on women's single life versus a man's single life. Studies show that single men tend to be more socially isolated and lonelier than married men. Now, of course, this is a generality. I'm not speaking for every single man, but for the majority of men, this is how it is. And this is one of the leading causes and factors for why there is a male loneliness epidemic. One of the biggest differences between men and women when they're both single is women tend to have several outlets where they can pour out their emotional load onto and who they can connect with on an emotional and a mental level, whereas men, we don't think the same way in those regards, especially on a romantic level. We think that the only person who we're supposed to be emotional to and pour out our emotional load onto is a woman or a partner. Women don't think the same, and this is why there is a male loneliness epidemic, because men think that we're supposed to hold every single one of our emotions in and we can't let it out to anyone. This is undeniably one of the reasons for why women tend to thrive more when they're single, because they have a community, a support system of other women and other friends who they can be emotionally connected to. We, unfortunately, don't do that. Single women are more likely to have deep friendships and platonic friendships with other people, and this makes them less dependent on romantic validation. Another reason for why women tend to thrive more when they're single than men do is because of the pressures that come with being in a relationship. There's added cultural and social expectations for a woman when she's in a relationship, like the domestic labor, for example, being one of the main ones. Cooking, cleaning, doing all that stuff. So when a woman is single and decides to live a life without a man, she can cook whenever she wants. If she doesn't want to cook, she doesn't have to. There's a lot less pressure coming from being single than being in a relationship. Very simply put, a woman could wake up one morning and decide, today I'm not going to cook. I don't feel like making any breakfast, so cereal it is. And this is essentially what I mean by when I say that a lot of women who are single tend to have a lot less pressure than women who are in marriages and in relationships. When you take all these things into consideration, it shouldn't be a surprise that men thrive more in relationships while women thrive more when they're single. And this tells me that in a romantic sense, generally speaking, men need women more than women need men.
And I agree with that. I really agree with that, because look at how our society is set up. You know, women tend to focus on the ends of domestic duties, even in labor when it comes to work. Let me explain this, right? Your nurses, your caregivers, your teachers, those are nurturing jobs. Those are spaces that are most likely to be opened up to women, you know. But when it goes to wars, it's like things like that, you see that these are male-centered jobs. Engineering, science, you know, IT, you know, those are masculine jobs. Presidency, even the political spectrum of it, especially in Africa, it tends to be male-centered, because women are not given that opportunity to enter those spaces because we are believed to be more feminine. And I think that a job should be given to whoever who is qualified to do the job, not the person who is gender-based. Because when we do such things, we tend to have societies that African societies tend to have currently. Because I know for a fact that men in these positions, especially in African countries, they are not qualified to be in those positions. They are just there because they are men, right? So if we make jobs, we make society more open to just this gender-based, genderless, not based, but genderless society, where people's qualifications and their experience speaks for them than their gender, then we can go far. But again, that's not patriarchy. That's why I don't like it that much, because of its potential to do harm, not just to men, but women, children, everyone else involved in it tends to sink.